Good evening. I'm Jason Johnson in for Joy Reid. It has been just 13 days since the election, and Donald Trump has already set a modern record for announcing his picks to serve in his incoming administration. But as he may be learning, there is a reason that presidents-elect take their time to research and actually vet each pick. Because just as quickly as he can make the announcements, the cabinet controversies are piling up and calling into question some of his choices to fill the most high-profile and sensitive jobs running our country. Over the weekend, we learned that Trump's pick for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who we've already told you would be the least experienced person to hold that role in our nation's history, paid a woman an undisclosed amount of money after she accused him of sexual assault, according to Hegseth's own lawyer. His lawyer says Hegseth maintains his innocence and that the 2017 encounter was consensual. But that isn't even the biggest problem facing one of Trump's cabinet picks. Remember, it's only been 13 days. That honor goes to Trump's pick for Attorney General, former Congressman Matt Gaetz, who had been under investigation by the House Ethics Committee for roughly 3 years over allegations of sexual misconduct involving a 17-year-old girl and illicit drug use. Gaetz has denied the allegations and tried to keep the committee's report from coming out by resigning last week once Trump named Gaetz as his pick for AG. That committee plans to meet on Wednesday to discuss the report and just what to do with it. But as we wait to see whether they will release it and what it says, we are hearing from the lawyer representing two women who testified to both federal and House ethics investigators about Gaetz' alleged misdeeds, including one claim that they claimed, a claim that one of them saw him having sex with her underage friend.
One of the first things that happened when she got the party, she testified to the House that within minutes of arriving, she was introduced to Matt Gaetz, and they went upstairs and had sexual intercourse on the bed, after which she went downstairs. At some point, she was walking outside to go to the pool area, and to the right, she witnessed Representative Gaetz having sex with her friend, who was 17 at the time.
A representative for Gaetz declined to address specific questions about NBC's interview with the lawyer, but earlier had described the allegations as baseless and intended to derail the second Trump administration. As to that House ethics report, yesterday Speaker Mike Johnson stood by his comments that it should remain hidden, saying that releasing it would open up a Pandora's box, even while multiple Republican senators say they actually want to see it.
My understanding is that the report is not finished. It's in a rough draft form, was not yet ready to be released. And since Matt Gaetz left the Congress, I don't think it's appropriate to do so. The Senate has a role, the advise and consent role under the Constitution, and they'll perform it. They'll have a rigorous review and vetting process in the Senate, but they don't need to rely upon a report or a draft report, a rough draft report that was prepared by the Ethics Committee for its very limited purposes.
In a clear sign that is not lost on Trump how controversial this pick is, Axios is reporting that now President-elect is personally calling senators to try and force his AG pick past the finish line. Joining me now to discuss is MSNBC political analyst and former Congressman David Jolly and Democratic strategist and MSNBC political analyst Basil Smilke. Greetings, gentlemen. It's good to speak to you. David, I will start with you because this is the thing. When we're looking at these cabinet picks, yes, we can all say that they're not qualified. But I want to start with Hegseth. This person is a Fox News commentator who's never run anything, who's never been in a serious position of command, who may or may not have tattoos that suggest right-wing, white nationalist sympathies. How is it that this administration, incoming administration, with a very, 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 very slim lead in the popular vote, and votes are still being counted, thinks that they have enough political capital to push through somebody like this? Like, what could be the mindset the Republicans have to try and push this person through this position with this slim a majority?
Because Donald Trump has proven time and time again that the Republican parties are loyal to him, or the Republican Party's loyal to him. I think Hegseth sails through. I know that sounds crazy, but there are just enough Republican senators that will blindly wrap themselves in the fact that Hegseth has 20 years in the National Guard and will overlook any other true questions of fitness or administration. And I think that what is common among all of the nominees, which is so unsettling, is they're each kind of activist nominees, right? In past administrations, as you know well, Jason, the nominees are typically administrators, maybe with executive experience, the ability to run a large agency. They're not really activist cabinet nominees. In each one of these cases, you're talking about nominees with their own agenda, their own activism, and most of that activism is typically to turn on the department that they're due to lead and try to dismantle it and break it down. Look, Hegseth, it should also be known, another reason that he'll likely sail through, 20 years in Republican politics, a former Republican Senate candidate, paid for by the Koch brothers, tried to privatize the VA. He knows how to speak Republican Senate language.
Basil, I want to move to the other highly problematic person here. So we have Matt Gaetz, who is up for AG. There's dozens of different reasons why that'd be problematic. But NBC News is reporting the majority of Senate Republicans doubt Gaetz will be confirmed as Attorney General. More than half of Senate Republicans, including some in senior leadership positions, privately say they don't see a path for the former Florida representative, according to a number of Republican sources. I don't buy it. I sort of agree with David here. I think most of these Republicans are not going to care. But what's your thought on this? Do you think that this sort of, leaks and unsourced statements of unhappy Republicans is going to result in Matt Gaetz actually being rejected for this position?
Yeah, let me just say something very quickly, Pastor David, on Hegseth, because I was stopped by a Marine the other day, not active duty, who said that his big concern about this pick is around women and people of color being promoted within the military, which, for him to stop me on the street and say that suggests that there are some real concerns, not just from us on the outside kind of looking in, right, but even from within the ranks of the military, that there is some real concern and hesitation there. So I just wanted to put that on the table. But to answer your question specifically, Senator Cornyn said last week that they wanted to see this report, and he said specifically he wanted to see it so that Donald Trump would not be embarrassed. That might be what they say, but what they also might be feeling is that, hey, they've got reputations and futures also. A lot of them are up for re-election pretty soon, so maybe we actually do need to take a step back and look. Now, whether or not that ends up making him untenable and unconfirmable, if you will, at the end of the day remains to be seen. But I think they have to look at this very carefully and figure out if they themselves are going to have to spend a lot of time defending him and themselves if they let this confirmation go through.
As the kids say, stairs in Brett Kavanaugh. I don't think they're going to have any problem with this whatsoever, unfortunately. And David, I want to take this back to you. Now, as much as I have no interest and will not spend the next 4 years discussing court intrigue and the Trump administration. We're a news program. I'm not trying to do that sort of thing. But I do think that if Matt Gaetz is not confirmed as Attorney General, it's not going to be because of any ethics investigation. It's not going to be because he's not qualified. Yeah. It's going to be because he spent all of his time personally insulting the people who have to vote him into office. The New York Times has a headline talking about all the names and insults that Gaetz has thrown at people. He called Mitch McConnell dangerous and McFailure, and said that Mark-Wayne Mullen is a disgrace to the Republican Party, and John Curtis, he's Mitt Romney without the good hair. As someone who served in Congress, people have long memories. Do you think that might actually be, no one will publicly say, I'm not going to vote for the guy because he made fun of me in a cloakroom. Sure. But that, to me, seems much more likely than the ethics charges and being what blocks him from getting in.
You hit on something very important. Matt Gaetz has absolutely no friends in Washington at exactly the time that he needs them. He has no friends. And part of it is just the natural people are risk averse and want to distance themselves from the gross allegations that have been levied against them, allegations that apparently have a lot of validity to them. And the other, though, is also he's entirely unfit. And it's just a bad pick by Donald Trump. This is someone with no experience as an assistant U.S. attorney or within the Department of Justice or as a prosecutor, and no executive experience to run an agency like the Department of Justice. And it's known. He is only there to prosecute the enemies list that Donald Trump wants prosecuted, and he will do whatever Donald Trump asks. I think the important thing here, and Basil referred to essentially the legacy of Republican senators that will have to take these votes. Look, among those who were on the losing side of this election, 48% of the country, statistically within the margin of those who actually won the election as voters. I would say the critical debates, the critical fights, the critical contests around these nominees is so important. This is not a time to lose energy. This is not a time to capitulate to Donald Trump. This is not a time to provide equity to Donald Trump. This is a time to laser focus on the nominees, but also the senators, and make sure that voters know that the senators are facing a tough vote on this one, and hold everybody accountable, even if you're on the losing side of the vote.